FIFA announced recently the U.S., Mexico, and Canada have automatically qualified. As far as everybody else, there are going to be some preliminary rounds to weed out some of your favorite vacation destinations, your Turks and Caicos, etc. And when we get down to the final round, it's going to be 12 teams divided into 3 groups of 4, round-robin play. The 3 group winners will qualify for the World Cup, and the 2 best second-place finishers will go to the Intercontinental Playoff. Now, our producer, Sean Sullivan, is very concerned. Obviously, the U.S. and Mexico have automatically qualified, so in this cycle, they're not going to be playing any qualifiers of any import. And even moving forward, with it being 48 teams, Sean Sullivan thinks these World Cup qualifying matches over the years between Mexico and the U.S. have been integral to that rivalry, and we might lose that because they're going to definitely qualify for every World Cup moving forward. There's not going to be as much at stake in those games. Do you buy that?
Well, I buy it. I mean, it's just a fact and a reality. But the trade-off is a 26 World Cup that's going to be bigger and better than anything that we have seen. And, it's about the collective oftentimes. And so while from a U.S.-Mexico perspective, we lose something and we lose some of that tradition. From a CONCACAF perspective, as you mentioned, the potential exists right now for, like we said, the 3 that are automatically qualifying, the other 3 that will qualify first out of those 3 groups of 4 in what will be CONCACAF World Cup qualifying just without the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. So that's 6. And then the potential for 2 more. So we could have 8 teams from CONCACAF in the World Cup in 2026. That's a good thing. But when it comes to the U.S.-Mexico rivalry, which has built and sustained not just these countries, but let's be honest, CONCACAF. And CONCACAF recognizes that they have this golden goose, and they certainly don't want to kill it. Rest assured, every opportunity that CONCACAF has to possibly stage a U.S.-Mexico game, and the friendlies, yes, those will be there. But they lack what I think our producer Sean and many out there want, which is to see U.S.-Mexico in games that matter, where there's no more excuses. And that pendulum and that gap that we talk about that starts to swing or starts to open up and close, what defines that on a year-to-year basis, and it changes constantly, is those games. So when Greg Berhalter and his team are consistently beating Mexico in competitive games, in tournaments, and raising the trophy, that takes on real meaning. And when you are a fan, either in the stadium or you are a fan and watching that, and you see that, that's bragging rights. Not some friendly that happens, everybody makes a lot of money and happens in a big stadium or something like that. So, whether it's Gold Cup, whether it's Nations League, whether it's these types of things that are going to happen, that you're not assured of having those games, but you hope those 2 teams find their way, and usually it's set up where they can at least get to the final, even though it's not a sure thing. You will have those. But yeah, we're facing a future where the U.S.-Mexico games certainly aren't assured from a competitive standpoint. And so, but I don't know what you do. Copa America, those types of things will happen. But again, it's going to be in tournament formats where you're not going to be assured, as opposed in the past where you knew you had the home and away. And the away part of it, going down to Azteca, which we know is a bucket list thing for a lot of American fans, that's going to go away too. So who knows when we're actually going to see the U.S.-Mexico in a competitive environment, let alone one that brings us to Mexico.
Because we're assuming this is going to be the format moving forward. It'll just be a matter of plugging the U.S., Mexico, and Canada back into it, right, in subsequent cycles. So you're already projecting that they're going to be in different groups and not going to play in World Cup qualifying? Is that what we're assuming here?
What do you mean? You mean for 2030?
Correct.
So for 2030, no, I think we could.
They'll figure something out where the U.S. and Mexico are still playing, but it'll just not have as much at stake because both teams are going to easily qualify.
It'll just be easier to qualify, and therefore the stakes aren't necessarily as big relative to making the World Cup. But it's again in whatever we're going to call it in the future. Ultimately, we've called it the hex, the oct, whatever it ends up being. So yeah, I think that it's going to happen, but it's going to be a fait accompli anyway for us to get to the World Cup. And so therefore it takes a little bit of the luster off.
Mexico-U.S. needs to be a protected game.
Right.
I'm dealing with that right now, Big Ten football, because the Big Ten is adding USC and UCLA, and so now there are so many teams, you can't play everybody as our director gets in my ear and says something obnoxious about USC. And you can't play everybody, so the schedules are going to rotate, but there are some games they want to preserve. Obviously, they want Michigan and Ohio State to still play each other every year, so those are the quote-unquote protected games, and so been a lot of talk in Michigan circles about what our protected games are going to be. It sounds like it's Ohio State, Michigan State, and UCLA, not USC. I don't know the reason for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I don't know anything about college football, but I know that USC is a better football program than UCLA, right?
What's interesting about that, and we're veering off topic here, is it means every other year I'm going to get to go to the Rose Bowl to watch Michigan play. That was like the holy grail when I was growing up.
There you go.
We're going to get to the Rose Bowl. Now we're going to play a regular season game there every other year. But nevertheless, whatever format they come up with, you'd like to see them preserve the U.S. and Mexico playing home and away. It might not mean as much because both teams are going to easily qualify, but nevertheless, you always want
for
that
23. I would like to see a home and away within a World Cup qualifying process, with the acknowledgement that it's not going to have the same stakes, and it probably never will. I mean, the more and more teams that come from CONCACAF, unless CONCACAF fundamentally changes the hierarchy and the power structure, that's not going to change for the U.S. or Mexico.
Last thing on this, also some news regarding the upcoming CONCACAF Nations League. The 4 quarterfinal winners there are going to secure berths in the Copa America in 2024, and then the quarterfinal losers are going to contest playoffs to determine 2 other participants in that tournament, so also got to think about that as well, the 2024 Copa America.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.